Hi, everyone. As everyone starts to join us today, I just want to welcome everyone to our webinar, What is an Illicit Discharge? My name is Kelly from Wisconsin Land+Water, a 501(c)(3) that supports the efforts of land conservation departments and committees throughout the state of Wisconsin in a variety of ways, including helping to host trainings and events like this one. Before we get started with our presentation today, I just wanted to mention that this webinar will be recorded and it'll be posted to Wisconsin Land and Water's website for future viewing. I'll follow up with everyone who registered for this event today with another email that includes a link to the webinar if you want to reference back to it or send it out. We'll also take questions today throughout the webinar using either the chat function or the Q&A function. So if you have a question at any time, feel free to submit one and we'll reserve some time at the end today to answer the questions that have come through. Our presenters today are Adelle Keppers, the Water Resources Specialist with the City of Superior, and Maureen McBroom, Stormwater Project Manager with City of Watertown. And before our presenters begin today, I'm going to kick things over to Megan, who has some information to share about Wisconsin Stormwater Week.
Thank you. Let's jump right in here. Okay, so this year is the third annual Wisconsin Stormwater Week, and it's a statewide grassroots effort with agencies and organizations across the state of Wisconsin that are working together to put this event on. And so we're encouraging people to host events throughout September 20th through the 28th, and then attend these webinars, all to help people become more aware of pollution prevention, stormwater pollution prevention. And we have a Wisconsin Stormwater Week proclamation. We worked as a group to put this together, and Tony Ebers agreed and supported this. So this is the official week of Wisconsin Stormwater Week for 2025. Since it is a grassroots effort, we try to use, we try to make it as official as we can by requesting support from Wisconsin Land and Water to host the webinars and declaring this proclamation. And then we also encourage people to become a partner. We have a partner sign up and outreach toolkit on our website. And I have the links to all these things I'll be talking about, and I'll share that after I'm done talking. But what's really great about this group is we have a social media kit and press release that we can share with each partner that signs up on our website. So then before and during the week of Wisconsin Stormwater Week, you can promote this event and host your own events. Because while it's a statewide event, we also want to have Wisconsin residents have resources for local resources with different stormwater groups. We also have a statewide call to action this year, and I'll get into that in just a second, but we wanted to promote stormwater pollution prevention through talking about various topics this week with webinars, free educational webinars, and polling in stormwater experts to talk on those topics. We worked our way through 2 of the webinars. Today is what is an illicit discharge, and then tomorrow we'll talk about stormwater community engagement. But we strategically planned Wisconsin Stormwater Week as part of, or the same week as National Stormwater Awareness Week and National Estuaries Week. So we just want to talk about water all week. So if you're interested, National Stormwater Awareness Week has so many trainings, free trainings and workshops online. And National Estuaries Week has a lot of information on their website about how to get involved, how to learn about an estuary near you. So I'd encourage you to check out those other events happening in celebration of kind of water across our state and nation. And then, as I mentioned, we had a call to action. So this year, we're asking Wisconsin residents to get involved with a local cleanup or adopt a neighborhood storm drain program. So if you are doing any of those things, you can register those events on the Wisconsin Stormwater Week website, and then people in your community can access that information through our website and be like, oh, I'd like to join that and learn about that event and get involved if they'd like to. Again, I'll add a link to the chat in just a moment. So just so we're all aware of what stormwater is before we dive into this topic, it's rain or snow melt that runs off our streets, our lawns, our farms, and construction sites, and it can pick up those pollutants on its way to the storm drains that are in our neighborhoods. And those storm drains connect our streets to our streams, so unfortunately, stormwater is a big reason for our waterways to get polluted. So why is pollution prevention important? We can protect our waterways. We can protect our waterways through a variety of really simple steps and tasks. And one of them is a little bit more technical, but it's something we're going to talk about today is the illicit discharge detection and elimination programming that maybe a city near you has. And so that's why these webinars are, I think, really important to help us learn some new tips and tricks to reduce stormwater pollution prevention. And we're learning from Wisconsin statewide experts about those kind of tips and tricks. So I think I'll leave it there. And Maureen, it's your turn. I'll drop the share.
All right, I think we're ready. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm going to go with yes. So thanks for joining us. Today we are going to talk about what is an illicit discharge. We have myself, Maureen McBroom, Stormwater Project Manager at City of Watertown, and Adelle Keppers is with the City of Superior. She's the Water Resources Specialist. I'm going to move on to start our presentation. So Kelly, if you could move forward. So today we're going to talk about stopping pollution at the source and specifically keeping pollution out of our storm sewers. So what is an illicit discharge? So the federal regulations define it as any discharge to a municipal separate storm sewer system that is not composed entirely of stormwater. So our next slide will talk about that. We have anything but rain or snowmelt would be considered an illicit discharge. So illicit discharge examples include wash water and cleaners, oils and greases, litter, loose garbage, debris, paints. Unfortunately, paint is something that we do consider illicit discharge, and we do find it. Construction sediment and dirt is regulated one way, but can also be considered an illicit discharge. Another one is excessive grass clippings and leaves. Unfortunately, we see that a lot during the summer and fall. And really, again, anything that is not rainwater or snowmelt. So there are exceptions to the rule. Anything you'll see on the right side here are not considered illicit discharge, but again, might be something that goes in the storm sewer system and is not rain or snowmelt. So clear water from water line flushing, landscape irrigation, water discharge from firefighting, right? Water has to go somewhere. It's going to go downstream into the sewers. We have air conditioning, condensation, sump pumps. You know, here in Watertown, we deal with a lot of high groundwater and a lot of sump pumps discharging from businesses and residential buildings. And then residential car washing, we don't consider to be illicit discharge. Different situation if it's a business though. So moving on. A couple examples will show you of an illicit discharges that we've seen before. Again, we have the paint in the middle. We've got some diesel here on the right hand, and then that grass that I mentioned. And just to throw a little extra in about the grass, that of course is an issue for communities like us where we've got impaired waterways that are impaired for too much phosphorus in the first place. So having grass cuttings that are decomposing and getting washed into our storm sewer is not only a clogging issue, but it's just sending more of that phosphorus downstream. And Adelle's going to share some examples on our next slide here.
Yeah, so this is an example of an illicit discharge that we had here in the City Superior. Sometimes it is easy to determine who the culprit is, and sometimes it isn't. In this instance, it was relatively easy, as this was a discharge of grout into a storm drain. A lot got in there, as you can see kind of in that center picture, but it was easy to determine where it came from if we follow those footsteps back to a new construction site there on the right. It was kind of nice that we didn't have to search too far for who did that. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult, like in the previous slide, the paint there, even though that was in front of a resident's house, we spoke to the resident and the resident didn't know where it came from. So trying to find the responsible party sometimes can be a little bit difficult. Next slide, please.
So many of our municipalities have rules against illicit discharges. One example here from the City of Superior highlights, what can and cannot go into the conveyance system or into water courses, where rivers, lakes, waterways, anything. Really anything that's going to be considered a pollutant and is going to exceed your applicable water quality standards. Basically, look at number 2, the commencement, conduct, continuance of any illegal discharge is prohibited. Our next slide will show another example. Again, municipalities are going to have rules against this, but they're going to be a little bit different, but you'll see similarities. So Watertown's example, again, talks about what can go into the storm sewer system or into our water courses. It's going to say you cannot put pollutants or anything containing pollutants that's going to exceed applicable water quality standards, other than stormwater, which includes rainwater and snowmelt, into the system. In Watertown's example, we got a little bit more specific and gave examples in our ordinance, just to be clear. And again, B says prohibition of illicit connections, can't have it. So if it gets to the point where there could be fines and other requirements to rectify some kind of illicit discharge once we know about it.
Yeah, so now that we know what an illicit discharge is and some more examples, I think it's important to talk about why it is important. And as Maureen discussed in the previous slides, it's part of our ordinance, and so it's something that we need to enforce as part of our ordinance. Another reason it's important, and a main reason we have the illicit discharge detection and elimination program that Megan mentioned, is it's something that is part of our MS4 permit with the state. And really everyone's main goal is that last bullet point there, is we just love our water. We want to keep it clean. A lot of our waters that we discharge to are also our drinking sources, their habitat for wildlife, recreation, swimming, boating, fishing. We really just want to protect our waterways. Next slide, please. So here I want to talk a little bit about how the City of Superior and Watertown are similar and different. On the right here, you'll see just a picture of the City of Superior's wastewater treatment plant. We are a part of our Public Works Department, and in Watertown, Maureen is also under the Public Works Department there, and that's just a picture there downtown. And next slides, we're just going to kind of go more into depth on the differences and similarities between us. So here on the right, we have the City of Superior. We are a combined sewer system. So our pipes that carry sanitary sewage, so your pee, your poop, your toilet paper, are the same pipe that collects that stormwater flow. That goes to our treatment plant and gets treated prior to discharge. We also have 3 combined sewer treatment plants in the city to help us with that additional volume that comes with rainwater, because even a ½ inch of volume around the entire city can produce many thousands of gallons of water, so we need extra capacity to hold that. So we have these combined sewer treatment plants over there on the right. Then on the left, in the city of Watertown, is a MS4. That's been mentioned a few times. That stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And that is where the pipes for your sanitary sewer and your stormwater sewer are completely separate. So as we move forward and we give examples, just keep that in mind when I talk about the City of Superior versus the City of Watertown, is some of our storm in the city of Superior gets treated at a treatment plant. Next slide, please. So here's a map of the storm sewers in the city of Superior. The red lines indicate where all of our pipes are. The arrows there show the direction of flow of that water. The city of Superior has 73 miles of combined sanitary and storm sewers, along with 30 miles of separate storm sewer across the city. And again, this map, the red lines only show the separate storm sewer here. Next slide, please. Maps like these can be really helpful when an illicit discharge report comes in, because depending on the situation, you can follow that flow of water downstream to see what bodies of water might potentially be impacted by the discharge, or you can trace it back upstream and possibly find a source. Here in this example, I just kind of highlighted a section of the city, and in green, you can see near a catch basin there, which is an inlet to where water gets into the system, kind of up in the right, or I'm sorry, the left corner there. But if you follow the green line, you can see that path where that would go. So it helps you decide where to look when you're looking for these things. Next slide. So continuing our maps, these are maps of our outfalls. So those pipes that we just saw in the previous map lead to these outfalls. Those 30 miles of pipes lead in the city of Superior to 156 outfalls. We have major and minor outfalls. The difference there just being the capacity that they can carry and the size of drainage area that they hold. In the city of Watertown, they have over 500 storm sewer outfalls. Most of them are major, which are not inspected regularly. They rely on the public to take care of adjacent storm inlets and to notify them if it looks like something is going into the system that shouldn't be. In the city of Superior, we also rely on the public in that way as well. So the water goes in the storm drain and it comes out here at one of these outfalls. Next slide. If you haven't seen an outfall, here is an example of what they look like. They're usually all around town, different portions. They can be big, small, all shapes and sizes. This is just an example. So if you see these out and about, this is what an outfall looks like. So they carry that water from your roads and your streets through those pipes and into a body of water. Here on the right, we have our streams listed in the city of Superior. That previous example I showed with the green arrows following a path down would actually discharge to the creek there that is on the highest. It's kind of that red, that Faxon Creek. And then that would lead into the bay. And there are similar river bodies of water in Watertown there on the left. Next slide. And finally, all of that goes to a larger body of water. In City Superior, it ends up in Lake Superior. That is our drinking source, so we want to protect that and make sure none of those pollutants get in there. And for Watertown, they are located at the headwaters of the Mississippi River watershed. So that all gets discharged into that watershed there. So big picture, it all goes to those larger water bodies that we also want to protect. Next slide, please. Up to you, Maureen.
Yeah. So our goal today is to share some things that residents can do. Really anyone can keep their eyes open. And once you know what illicit discharge looks like, you'll know, what it looks like, what to do, who to call, and all that. And then we also want to show you what it is that we do with that information. So to start with, what residents can do, what to look for, where you might find it. We talked earlier about illicit discharges, including wash water cleaners, oils, greases, litter, loose garbage. So we're covering both liquids as well as maybe some physical things. Paints, paint can be easy to find on an inlet because it's going to be a different color. But you might see someone actually dumping, or you might just see like, oh, why is that inlet look like it's blue today, yesterday, and for the past how many years it's never been blue. That would be something to call someone about. If you see construction sediment or dirt, that could be, clumps of mud in the road, or it could be like runoff from an active rain event. It could be, sometimes it's that chocolate milk colored water running down the curb line from maybe a construction site that might be up the block further. Once it gets in the street and it gets towards the storm sewer, it's going to move throughout the city in different ways we don't expect it to. Grass clippings and leaves. Again, now we're getting into something that's not a liquid, but it can be considered an illicit discharge, especially when you add rainwater to it and you start decomposing things. In places to look for it, again, along that curb line, looking at those stormwater inlets. But if you see something spilled in like the street, could be in the middle of the street, might not be to the inlet yet, could be in a parking lot. If those are spills that will end up migrating towards the inlets, and that's the stuff we want to try and stopping in the first place. So that's what to look for. Some other things that might be harder to identify would be on the next slide. So kind of characteristics to look for. If you see something, you're not sure what it is, but it's got unusual color to it. Foam could be a number of different sources that could be leading to something foamy in the curb or along the street. Suspended sediments also, that could be just water carrying some kind of fines along with it. Something that doesn't smell right. Sometimes you'll see that, unfortunately, near a creek maybe, or near the waterway, or again, up towards like the land. Maybe it's something that's going to run off eventually when you add rain to it. Dead vegetation in a swale, that's a good indicator that something may have happened there. It's not just a matter of someone mowed too close to the bottom of the swale, but why are there spots where the vegetation won't grow? What's happening here? So those are the kind of things to look for. Those are the clues that there could be something else that should be reported, and maybe someone else can take over looking into it.
So that's what residents can do, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about what we as a municipality looks for and why. And I'm going to start with the why. So the major why is that the illicit discharge and detection elimination program is something that is written into our permit. And our permit requires us to have annual inspections and field screenings. And so we go out and monitor these things regularly and take readings, look at them, observe them, see what we see, and report that back to the DNR. Next slide. So when we're out there, we look for a lot of the same things that residents look for, those sensory observations, that sight, smell, color, but then we kind of take it one step further. If there is water running, we will take a sample, or if we find something that we think is a little suspicious in a pool of water, we might take a sample there too. But we test for a bunch of these parameters over here on the left: total copper, phenol, potassium, fluoride, E. coli, ammonia, etc. These are what we call indicator parameters. So these parameters, if they are abundant or present in certain levels, it can indicate that something is unusually happening in that water. There may be an illicit discharge. So we use these parameters and the values that they give us as clues as to what is actually happening at that outfall for that discharge. Next slide, please. So first we have to go out and find the outfall, which can be a little fun sometimes. As you saw in the previous slide, the outfalls are located all around and they're not always easily accessible. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of bushwhacking to get there. But you find the outfall, you take those observations, you collect a sample if necessary, and then you run your test. So the example on the right is an ammonia test. If ammonia is present, the chemicals bind to you add a sample to your test tube, you add your chemicals. If it's present, it will change color. So this sample started out clear, and we added the chemicals, and it changed to this orange color, indicating the presence of ammonia. So that is a positive test. And then using the checker on the far right, we get a value of how much is present. And so we can take that value and compare it against a chart that we have that tells us approximately what values might be considered concerning. Because a lot of those parameters that we do test, those can be found in nature naturally from wildlife or other sources of bacteria that produce those things. It's just those elevated levels that we're more concerned about leading to an illicit discharge of some sort. Next slide. So once we go out, we take all those parameters, our samples, we put them together in our field screening. An example of what that looks like is on the left here. This is our field screening sheet that we use whenever we go out. It makes sure that we check all of those parameters and we record it along with photos. We take so many photos. We love photos. But we take all that information and we compile it in a report to the DNR as part of our permit. We include not only the outfall screening, but other data that is important to stormwater. That is also part of our permit that we need to collect. And we present that to the DNR annually so they know that we're staying on top of our permit and we're monitoring these things. We also like to share that information with the public. So here in the city of Superior, we like to put together these little infographics. So that's what you see on the right. The one in the center there, the blue one, is from 2023, some of our data there, and on the left is from 2024. So we compile that into nice, easy bits for the public to know what we're doing, why we're out there, and how all of this is helpful to keep our waters clean.
All right, so now that we talked about what to look for that actually consists of an illicit discharge, let's back up a step and talk about how to stop it at the source. So things that residents can do to protect stormwater include covering trash, making sure that we don't have rain getting into open garbage cans, creating that garbage can soup, and then, spilling and ending up in the storm sewers. Keeping grass clippings and leaves in your yard or composting them is a great way to handle them. Properly disposing of chemicals and different auto oils. Things like a municipal or a county clean sweep event is a good way to get rid of those items. We just had one this past Saturday in Watertown where Jefferson County held a clean sweep event, and residents could drop off an entire trunk load of old cleaning supplies, paint, fluids, fertilizer, etc. for $10. So it's a popular event. It's a good thing to take advantage of, and they're usually advertised throughout the summer. So keep an eye out for those. Another thing is to pick up after those pets. So we love our pets and we know we love to walk them and they love to leave presents for us, but they need to be picked up so that it doesn't get rained on and just wash down into the drain. At the high concentrations that a lot of us have dogs within, residential areas, this ends up being a source of pollution. So picking up our pets is a good thing. We mentioned adopting a drain earlier. Definitely a program that you probably find in your area. If not, I'm sure there's ways that you could start an adopt a drain program, or there's always just informally taking it over yourself and just keeping it clear of different debris to make sure the water is going to flow down there okay. And as I mentioned earlier, residential car washing is exempt from illicit discharges. So washing a car like on top of the grass is great because the water can just infiltrate into the ground and not have to run down the driveway and into the storm sewer. The next slide, we'll talk about adopt a drain programs a little bit. So this is really a great coordinated effort to highlight keeping storm drains clean. Again, trying to keep leaf litter, trying to keep debris off of the drains so water can flow in there is great, but also that next step in trying to make sure that nearby residents, that businesses in the area know that things should not be going into the street, into the curb line, into the drain is a great education piece that we can all take on ourselves. The other piece of trying to keep them clean is trying to avoid flooding, because when we get those leaves during the fall and we get the grass clippings and other things on there, that can end up being almost like a cover on top of the inlet, and water ends up flooding in the streets and can't get into the storm sewer system as designed. So it is kind of a twofer, trying to keep the pollution out of the system, but also trying to reduce flooding in our areas too. And our next slide is about, if you see an illicit discharge, what are we going to do with that? So if you see someone intentionally pouring something into a storm drain, which unfortunately does happen, and if you feel comfortable, maybe asking your neighbor, hey, can you not do that? Do you know where that goes? That is great. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, we don't ask you to go over and, start scolding someone for doing something they shouldn't do. You can always contact your local municipality, contact the county. There's a couple examples here. If there's something that looks really bad, if it's going to be a fire, explosion, safety hazard, go ahead and contact 911. You can contact, again, the local municipality. We will be able to respond or at least direct the complaint somewhere else to the right place. There's also the issue of reaching out to DNR, which we'll cover in a couple minutes too. Adelle's got a really good example here of how Superior has a notification system. So I'll let you take over with the next slide here and share that system.
Thanks. Yeah, at the City of Superior here, we have your City of Superior app that you can download and put on your phone. It is helpful for a lot of things. As you can see on there, you can view webcams, you can look at the parking schedule, you can do permitting, all those other things on there, park reservations. But the one that we're going to focus on related to illicit discharge is reporting a concern. So you'd click on reporting a concern, and then you'd select your type of concern. Ours is under sewer because we're talking about stormwater. Next slide. And then you'll be able to select what is wrong with the sewer or stormwater. And here it is option number 6, which is illicit discharge, so pollution in the storm sewer. You then have the option of either typing in the address where the incident occurred, or just using your GPS and it will pick your nearest location. You can write in what you see in the notes section there of, I saw someone intentionally pouring oil down the drain, or this person has a bunch of grass that they just blew into the street. And then you also have the option of adding photos. We love photos. They're very helpful to us to determine exactly what's going on. We still go out and investigate all of these things, but having a photo up front helps us know to some of the severity of the situation as well. And all of this is, you have the option in our app to remain anonymous, which we really enjoy because I feel more people are willing to say what they see then, but you can also put in your information. And there is the option for a back and forth text messaging style communication as well. So we really like that.
All right. And then we just want to spend a few minutes on kind of the difference between illicit discharges and spills. So spills are usually a little bit larger, something that's going to have more of an impact to the waterway. The picture here actually is almost a little hard to see, but the creek looks white because the creek was white. This was a spill that happened at a business upstream where a non-toxic liquid type material spilled out of a semi and crossed the parking lot into a drainage ditch that ultimately led to this creek, which was a tributary to the Rock River. So it was it looks like a white creek because the water was white. It was odd. It was something we were getting complaints on because it was something out of the norm. Then folks are like, why does it look like this? So our next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the difference between a spill and illicit discharge. It's hard because they're very close together and could be the same thing at times. It really kind of depends. The spill would be something that has more of a hazardous substance to it and could really be a threat to the environment. It could be any substance that could be a threat to human health or the environment or both because of how much there is, right? Or maybe the concentration of it, or maybe other physical, chemical characteristics to it. It could be anything from, the tanker truck rollover. The one I just showed you was a leak. It was a failure in the system between the hose that was supposed to fill the truck and where the connection was. So a tank valve failure in the wall of a manure storage lagoon. These are all examples of different types of spills. The hazardous substance could be petroleum-based, agricultural, industrial, wastewater, manure, other things, right? At that point, it's something that is going to have more of an acute risk. It could be something that just happened. A spill usually requires some kind of immediate response and then reporting as well. So if something like that is noted, we're looking for contact to the local municipality and or to DNR. Usually DNR at that point is going to be more so in charge of a large spill. And Adele, I'll let you go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So there will be a few slides coming up here that are being used with the permission of the DNR. They came from a training I attended, and you'll be able to distinguish them by the DNR symbol down in the left-hand corner. So thank you, DNR, for letting us use these slides for educational purposes, and also to anyone asking questions regarding the DNR slides. I will do my best to answer them, but I am not from the DNR. Next slide, please. So in the state of Wisconsin, we are divided into 5 districts, and you can see them down there in the little map in the center. I added that to this slide for your reference. Each of the regions reports their spills to the DNR, and on the left here you can see the pie chart is the distribution of spills throughout the state over about 5 years, and this is from 2015 to 2020. So this is a little out of date, but it's still a good representation that spills happen throughout the entirety of the state. They happen everywhere. And here in the city of Superior, we're in the northern region, so we're that little red sliver, and then Watertown is in the south central, which is that green portion. And on the right, there are lists of the types of substances that get reported. So these were the types of substances reported in 2020. The bulk of them are petroleum-based products. And again, then they have other products like manure, mineral oil, chemicals, etc. So spills happen all over the state, and they come in all different varieties of product that is spilled. Next slide. Here is an example of one that was reported to the DNR. This was a gasoline tanker that was overturned. It happened at nighttime, so when they went to do their initial assessment, they determined that nothing had been released from the tanker. They went back in the morning to continue that assessment, and they found that there is over 1,800 gallons released from that tanker of gasoline, and it had made its way to a nearby creek. You can see the attempt of the cleanup of the creek there on the right and in the upper part with some absorbent material. And it was difficult, I imagine, but they removed over 155-gallon drums of impacted material to attempt to clean up that spill. Next slide. This is a spill that happened here in the city of Superior. So this was last year in 2024. A lady that owned, there's that garage, that brown garage there in the center, you can see she lived in that house, and she woke up one day, came outside and saw this red fluid and was very concerned for her dogs and herself. And so she called us and said, "What is this fluid? Someone please check it out." So we went out, discovered it was hydraulic fluid, and started our cleanup process there. Next slide, please. Along with that process, we reported it to the DNR. And we were able to identify the source of the spill. A neighbor had a camera. You can see the image there on the left. It was a truck that had gone through the alley and one of their lines blew. And instead of cleaning it up, the driver went on his way. So we were able to find the owner of the truck and speak with them. We issued them a notice of violation for the discharge. And between ourselves and the DNR, we worked with them to get that all cleaned up. They ended up hiring a third-party company to come out and clean up and remove a bunch of that contaminated sediment. There you can see on the right, they're removing and then adding, putting it back to the alley there. So it's important when things do go wrong that you try to clean them up. We also had them retrain their drivers on what to do during an incident because that specific driver did not know what to do, hence them leaving and not notifying anyone. Next slide.
All right, so those are a couple great examples. The idea is letting everyone know what to do if you do see a spill. So Wisconsin has a spill law requiring that they must be reported. If this is a business, usually a business is going to have an environmental coordinator or manager on site who knows the process and knows where to report to and knows when to report it. If you do see something and it's not part of your business, your job, if you're just observing something, there is a 24-hour emergency hotline that you can contact that is run by the DNR. Here's an example of things to report. So a gallon of gasoline onto a hard surface, onto a parking lot or a street, for example. 5 gallons of petroleum product onto a pervious surface. Using 250 pounds of dry fertilizer should really not be out there, not in a container, should not be just piled like that. That would be considered to be a spill. 25 gallons of liquid fertilizer, 250 pounds of dry fertilizer. So I think I just said that. But the idea is that these are quantities of materials that in those quantities could pose a health environmental impact problem. So these are things to be reported to spills hotline. Next slide. When you call in a report, what are we looking at? We're looking at where is this happening? Address, intersection, if it's on a parking lot, if it's in a field, all that is important to know. Responsible party, if you see who it is, that's great. If this is just something that's observed and there's no one around, that's just something to note as well. What does the substance look like? If you're not sure what it is, I don't recommend going over and touching it, feeling it, tasting it. Don't do any of that stuff. Let folks know what it looks like, but don't really get too far into it yourself. Let the experts take care of it. Potentially impacted receptors. So if you're looking at maybe a stream downstream, if you're looking at different connections to maybe the storm inlet and we know where that's going to go, what looks like might happen if this material keeps moving and migrating downstream. Cleanup actions that are taking place is a good thing to know if there is anything happening. And as Adele said, take pictures. Pictures are great. It really helps to identify what the situation is and what's happening and what needs to happen. I'll let Adele take over from there.
Again, bringing back to the DNR and our 5 different regions here, it's a little bit better picture for you to kind of find where you are in the state and to connect with your local spill team. But the main resource is call the hotline and they will direct you to the appropriate party if you're not sure where you belong. But I have worked closely with Jeff Paddock here in the northern region. Great guy. He just wants to help keep our waters clean like we do. So they do not be afraid. Call if you need to, and we will sort out what needs to happen next. Next slide. So we've kind of talked about illicit discharges a bunch, and then we went over some spills. But as Maureen mentioned, I think earlier, they're a little difficult to discern sometimes. Sometimes they can be both things. So here's an example of something that happened here in the city of Superior. There was an apartment building that got reported of discharging something smelly. Went out and investigated and found that they had a sewage backup into their basement and had just been discharging it via hose into the alley. That discharge then led to the street and down into a storm drain. So it was an illicit discharge for getting into the storm drain, And it was also a spill because of that health hazard. This was cross sidewalks and children biking here. We don't want people walking through sewage. Um, so we worked with our team to get our crew out there to clean up. You can see there on the right, they were doing what they could to clean up as much as they could. And then we also, again, reported this to the DNR. We knew the responsible party was the owner of the building, and we sent them a notice of violation. We sent them a fine for our cleanup efforts, and worked with them to fix what needed fixing and make sure that they don't do that again. So sometimes it's not a clear cut if it's a spill or illicit discharge, but the main thing is to just, if you see something that's kind of funny, just let someone know and we can sort it out. Next slide. So we're just about done here, and these are our key takeaways. We want everyone to kind of, hopefully you have learned this throughout this process and can take this with you as you go about your day. So knowing what an illicit discharge is, and that being a discharge to an MS4, again, a MS4 is a municipal separate storm sewer system. So discharge to that MS4 that is not entirely stormwater. We like to say only rain down the drain. It's a fun little way to remember. And then learning what a spill was. And a spill is anything that can harm human health or the environment. And most common spills are usually petroleum products. And then what to do if you do see something. So if you do see something, first and foremost, if there is a health and safety hazard to life, call 911. Again, they will get you the emergency services that are needed. Otherwise, call the DNR spill line or your local municipality, and they will work to get someone out there to see exactly what's going on, what it is, and assess what needs to be done from there. Next slide, please. This is just a list of some resources that you can take with you. We didn't talk about all of this, and again, these are specific to the city of Watertown and Superior, because those are the resources we have access to. But your local municipality may have similar programs like the Adopt a Storm Drain, or one of the resources listed here is the Regional Stormwater Protection Team, which is a combination of the city of Superior, the city of Duluth, and other surrounding cities, where we all meet and talk about stormwater together. There's also the DNR spill line on here that has more information regarding spills. So there's many resources that you can use, but these are not the only resources. So reach out to your local area and see what is available. And finally, next slide. Thank you everyone for listening. And I believe we can take some questions now.
Right. Thank you so much, Adele and Maureen. That was really informative and really great examples with images that, really clearly illustrate it. That was really great. So like I mentioned at the beginning, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them through the chat or the Q&A. I'll check both. Let me see if, yeah, get that up there. And additionally, if you'd prefer to voice your question or, don't want to type it out, you can use the raise hand function in Zoom as well, and I can turn your microphone on so that you can ask a question that way. I haven't seen anything come through the chat just yet. So I'll give it just a couple more seconds to see if anyone is typing away. And I wanted to reference back, I did see, I did have a question, just if you know the answer, Adele, the 2023 and 2024 infographics that you showed from city of Superior, there was like a really big difference in tons of trash and debris from 2023 to 2024 that were recorded. Do you know if there's any specific reason behind that or why that might have been?
Um, I do not, and if I remember correctly, and Megan can hop in if I am misremembering, uh, that tonnage is from our street sweepers. So that's another program we have is the street sweepers go out and try to prevent those leaves and grass and dirt and grit from getting into the storm sewer systems. Um, I am not aware of any difference as to why the tonnage was so different between the 2 years. Um, Megan, do you know of anything that might have caused that?
I imagine there's a host of potential reasons behind it, but
Yeah, good question. I wonder, I mean, the only thing I can speculate, and we could do a follow-up because I don't really know. It could be a change of schedule, like how often, perhaps how often we're doing the street sweeping. Maybe there's more locations, more roads we're visiting. Yeah, so we're with the Environmental Services Division and the street sweepers with the streets department. So we do communicate, but we don't always know like exactly their strategy. Great question.
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, like I said, I'm sure there were a host of potential reasons behind it, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that you guys just might have nailed a presentation that you defined things so clearly and went over things so concisely. We had a shout
Yeah.
out in the comments saying that it was a great webinar and it was seconded, but I'm not seeing any questions come
Okay.
through. So,
I have a
Megan.
question. Yeah, so can either of you speak to the frequency of these calls you get weekly, daily, if there's a season that you hear about these more often in the city that you work at?
I can jump in on that really quick. And I'm just going to say that we don't get as many reports as Adele does up in Superior. However, we don't have the ease of reporting that I've learned Superior has. So the idea of having a city app that people can just use to download, your information. This is what I saw here. It's something I'm looking into and hoping that we can start doing here because I hadn't seen that before. So we do get fewer calls than Adele gets, but we do get them more so during summer and fall. I think not so much in spring, which surprises me because I think people are getting out more during spring and seeing things outside. But they do start to come in the heat of summer and fall. And a lot of ours do piggyback onto flooding concerns too. So if things are getting into the inlets that are clogging things, um, so some of our calls are more so non-illicit discharge, but come in as an illicit discharge. Adele, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I actually had a call this morning. So they, similar to the time frame that Maureen said, it's kind of spring to fall. There's an occasional few that happen in winter, and those are uh, I'd say closer related to spills than illicit discharges. Um, but we have seen an increase in reports since we have started using the app by about twofold. And I think part of that is ease as which residents can report. We have had an online form and a call number prior to that. But I would say before the app, a lot of our reports were coming from our internal training that Megan did with our teams here and other teams around the city. So when our streets crew is out working on something, if they see something, they know that they can call us and then we can come out and investigate. So a lot of initial illicit discharge reports were that way, and then a handful from the residents. But now we're seeing with the app, we're getting more residential input as well. So it has changed, and we do like that ease for the residents of the app for reporting.
Awesome, thank you. And maybe to close us out today, I did see a question come through in the chat. If you could each describe the dry weather screening you've done as part of your MS4 permit requirements and whether you've identified illicit discharges as part of those efforts.
I'll jump in there first. So our dry weather screening programs, we touched on that just a little bit more so in explaining what it is that we sample for and we're looking for. Watertown has a number of outfalls that are categorized as a priority or a major outfall, and those are the ones we're required to look at either annually or once throughout the permit term as part of our MS4 permit. Watertown incorporates our interns. We have a program, we've got college interns that come every summer, and we train them to go out and they excuse me, go out in the field with us, and they get their hands-on experience looking at the outfalls, conducting illicit discharge inspections themselves. They get to fill out the forms and see if there is anything flowing through the outfalls. If there's not, great. They're just looking for the physical characteristics. They're looking for any kind of odors. They're looking for any kind of damage to the outfalls, as well as looking for something flowing through there. And then they write up their report, and then we get to hang on to that until we get audited someday. But if there is something flowing through there, that's when we do the field test kit. And those are a couple of the pictures that you saw on the slides. We are at a point in Watertown where we've tracked enough of these, enough years of testing that we're able to say, hey, we know there's something flowing through here, but we've identified it as groundwater. We do have high groundwater here. We've got a lot of sumps that are connected to our storm sewer system somehow. So we've worked with DNR to say, hey, we know there's going to be clear water coming through here, but it's clear. And so we've got a secondary layer of characteristics we're looking for. And if we don't see those, we're okay to just fill out reports and not kind of use up our chemicals and waste our money on sampling groundwater every year. But when there's something that either is an outfall that we need to sample or something kind of strange looking is out there, then yes, we do our sampling. In past years, we've been able to identify chlorine or ammonia hits that we aren't getting reported by residents. We're just finding them through our screening process. And then once we find that, we start tracking it up sewer shed and seeing where the possible inputs could be coming from, and then start working with whether it's businesses or property owners or whoever up there. And we've been able to resolve those issues so that in the past few years, we actually haven't had any hits. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, it has been successful in identifying a few items that should not be coming through our system that might have been a connection or some kind of practice that needed to be changed so that we don't have it getting into our storm sewers.
I'll piggyback off of that, and very similar to what Maureen said, we have a certain number of outfalls we inspect annually, and then throughout the duration of our permit. I did want to address one thing in the question about dry weather screening. Everyone might not be familiar with what that means. So when you think about a MS4, the separate storm system, at the end of your outfall, if there is no rain, the storm system should theoretically only be carrying rain, so there should be no discharge there. So we are part of our permit asks us to inspect during dry weather, and we consider dry weather anything that is 48 hours of no rain or rain event that can cause runoff. And we do that inspection during that dry season because during that dry time, because if there is something wet or is water flowing, then it can likely lead to an illicit connection or maybe some infiltration like Maureen was talking about just from groundwater. But that's why we do why it's considered dry weather. We occasionally do wet weather as well, just for some other monitoring and things, but the dry weather is the one that's the most common that we use. And I was fortunate enough during my first year to do some outfall screening and discover what was nicknamed Adelle's poop because I found we had a sampling with high levels of ammonia, which indicated the possible presence of sewage. And after some more investigation, we found that there were 3 houses that had accidentally been connected to the storm sewer instead of the sanitary sewer. So we went and fixed that right away. And that is a good example of why we do these outfall screenings and their purpose. So that's my answer to that question.
Thank you again both so much for joining us today and presenting. A reminder to everyone that I'll send out a follow-up email with a link to this recording and some of the other links that Megan shared earlier. And if you think of any questions, Adelle and Maureen have both been more than willing to share email addresses and answer questions if you have anything else and want to reach out. So I will share that in that follow-up email as well. Thank you all for joining us today, and we hope that you'll join tomorrow for the last webinar as part of this series for the week. And thank you both again. Have a good rest of your day.